So welcome to Module 3. We're going to talk about technical specifications and product requirements. To recap what we did in Module 2, we learned specifically who your customer is, who your competition is, what the market likes about your competition, even more importantly, what the market hates about your competition, and how to strategically position your product against the competition. In this module, we're going to learn product requirements and technical specifications, what they are, how to write them, and how they're going to save you thousands of dollars on product development. So let's get started. Product requirements, also known as a technical specification, are pretty much a list of all the features and characteristics that define your product. So for example, if the color of your product is blue, you're going to have a line in your product requirements that says the color of this product shall be blue. You're going to do that for every aspect of functionality there is in the product. But the good news is, if you've been following along and filling out the worksheets, you've already done most of the work. See that fourth column in the market research category, where we had you write feature for feature which features you were going to make better than your competitors, or which features were going to be different than your competitors? You're going to take all the features that are the same, and then the features that are different from the column that you wrote, that fourth column, and pretty much just going to add verbiage to it and maybe add a few more additional requirements. So for example, let's talk about the dimensions of your product. We're going to itemize line by line, item for item, every feature. So a good one is talking about the dimensions of the product. Okay? If your product is going to be, say, 3 inches wide, then you're going to say the product is going to be 3 inches wide. And then you'll go ahead and say the product is going to be 2 inches deep, and the product is going to be 4 inches long, or whatever, whatever the size of your product actually is. That's how you're going to define it. And when you write it, you're going to say shall. You're going to say the product shall be 4 inches wide or 3 inches wide, or whatever your dimension is. You're not going to say will, because shall in the product development world means it has to be done. And will means it doesn't really have to be done, and that nobody's obligated to do it. So always write your product requirements with shall. Product requirements are not a living document, okay? Other companies may tell you that they're a living document. That's because they want more money out of you over time. The truth of the matter is once you write a decently detailed product specification and product requirements, once you write those, it shouldn't change. It should not change throughout the development process. There may be cases where in the beginning, before product development starts, you're negotiating changes in the requirements, but product requirements should not change for this version of the product, because these requirements define every aspect of your product, and the farther down the process you decide to change those requirements, the impact it has on potentially everything else in your entire product. So this is where we want to spend our most time. We want to take all the comprehensive product features that we want in our product. We want to itemize them one for one in the spreadsheet. We want to be as detailed as possible, and we want to capture as many requirements, as many details into requirements as possible. Now, in the material that you downloaded, along with the worksheets, I've given you an example template, an example, and another example of product requirements for another product. Okay. As you can see, you don't have to have 10,000 requirements. You just need to be able to describe your product in clear enough detail where engineers aren't going to guess. And guess what? That's how product requirements and technical specifications save you a lot of money. See, when you hand engineers a technical specification, you're telling them exactly what the product has to do. You're not telling them how to build it. You're telling them exactly what the product has to do, what the features are, the size, the preferred shape, the color, how much the product has to weigh, how much manufacturing cost has to be. Every single aspect in detail that you can think of about your product, manufacturing type is going to be an important requirement to have. But at the end of the day, engineers aren't going to have to guess, okay? They're not really going to have to come back to you at every design aspect and say, hey, you know, how big does it have to be? Well, how heavy does it have to be? What color does it have to be? Or, even worse, the engineer or product designer isn't going to take liberty and design a feature or an aspect that you didn't want in there to begin with. You know, you might have forgotten to specify the color, and they made it hot pink, and maybe you needed it to be red for your customer base. And of course, you can go back and you can tell that designer or engineer to make the change, but guess what? They're charging you for their time, so they don't really care. They'll be very nice to you. They'll say, of course we'll make that change. But it's going to cost you more time and money. We're in the business of saving you money and lowering your product development risk. That's why we're having you spend a lot of time on writing product developments, on writing product requirements, and making technical specifications. And another aspect, once you have these product specifications clearly written and in enough detail, and if you're not sure if you've written these product development specifications in enough detail, please send them to info@letskeyinnovations.com. I will check them. I'm an expert in writing product specifications. It's one of my backgrounds. And one of the things I used to do for the Defense Department to save them billions of dollars on developing products for their high-risk and high-cost programs. So we're bringing that industry practice here by having you write a product development specification. But once you have the product specification written, it should flow a little something like this. You know, you're going to take it's a lot of copy and paste from the market research you already have. It's going to go you'd write something like this. You know, the background. The background is, if we use the electric floor cleaner example that we've been using, the background would be something like this. You know, we're designing a brand new electric floor cleaner. It's focused for women ages 25 to 54. We need the product to have this list of features, The manufacturing process is going to be for the plastic parts, shall be like injection molded plastic, or in other products it may be vacuum formed or something. The different manufacturing processes have different product requirement specifications. So for example, if your product has small parts and they're made out of plastic, then injection molding is going to be your best bet, because you're probably going to manufacture a lot of them over the course of the time. And the tooling for injection molding plastic for small parts is relatively small. Small products cost less to manufacture. But the draft angle has to be appropriate for the tooling. So typically draft angle, we're greater than 5 degrees on injection molded parts, because the draft angle is the angle responsible for allowing the entire part to eject from the tool. Because if the draft angle isn't big enough, depending on the geometry of the part, then when you try to pop the plastic part out of the aluminum or steel tool, it's going to break. And we don't want parts to break, because guess what? Then you have to make a new tool that costs thousands of dollars and pay more money for manufacturing. So we want to make sure that the engineering team that's designing your product is designing for the right manufacturing process, because you've specified it in your technical specification. Okay, but this is going to be a 1-page or 2-page document. You're not going to be overwhelming, and you should really it's really going to come from all of the market research you did. So you're going to include everything on the market research. You're going to include your audience, who your customer is, how they really like to buy products. You're going to include the feature tree, and you're going to just turn that into requirements. Everything that you need to have in your product should be a shall. And it may expand beyond just what you think the physical properties of your product is. So for example, if it has electronics and you want to sell the product in the United States, well, you want to make sure it's communicating, if it has wireless or anything to it, you want to make sure it's compliant with FCC regulations. If you're selling to a European market, there's ITU and similar European regulations as well. So you want to make sure, depending on who you're selling your product to and where you're selling your product, what regulations and standards are applicable to your product, that has to be met. If it's a if it's a plastic cup, for example, maybe one of your important features is it has to be BPA free, for example. It really depends on the research that you've done and have now comprised into this document, right? Now let's talk a little bit about outsourcing product design, okay? You may have taken your design as far as you can go. You may need to outsource talent because maybe you don't have the time to design the product yourself. And that's okay, Because now what you have is you have marketing documents, okay? You have product requirement specifications. And by the combination of those two, what you can do now is you can solicit engineering companies and outsource talent to give you a firm fixed price on what it's going to take to develop your product. So let me give you an example, okay? You're giving engineers a list, a detailed list of exactly what they have to build, okay? Not how to build it, but exactly what they have to build. So they're not going to guess. And they should be able to give you a firm fixed price budget with some assumptions that they're going to make, okay? They're going to say, okay, we're going to assume, by labeling this in, this manufacturing process, this is going to be the draft angle that we're going to strive for because it's an industry standard draft angle. And they should point to the specifications, okay? But they shouldn't give you an hourly rate. They shouldn't say, okay, yeah, we'll do this, we'll charge by the hour or whatever, because that opens up risk. I mean, they should be developing exactly to your product specifications. Now, where you choose to outsource talent to is very important, and I'll tell you why it's important. Location, okay? You may go on a freelance website. You may find talent from all over the world, and they may have high ratings, lots of good reviews, and you may be enticed by their low rate if you're looking for hourly work or you have done in the past, okay? But if you're developing a new product and maybe you want to patent that product one day, have intellectual property to defend your product, maybe you've done the first 2 modules and you decided, wow, I'm onto something here. I'm going to make a ton of money. It's going to take a couple of years, but this is worth doing, and I want to protect my product. Well, you don't need to file for the patent right now, but what you need to do is you need to make sure that all your bids, all your product requirements, all your discussions that you're having with the outsourced talent is under a non-disclosure agreement, okay? This means that the other party will not disclose the information that you have given them. Now, why is location important? Well, location is important because you're putting in place a contract between 2 people or 2 companies, right? Your company and the outsourced company. And what happens, you have to ask yourself the question now, what happens if the outsourced company blogs about what you've written on or has told other people what your product is and how it operates, and it gets published and talked about online somewhere? How are you going to enforce that contract? Well, I'll tell you, you're going to have to hire an attorney in that country and take your luck with their rules to see if you can really enforce it. When you hire talent in the same country, for example, I'm in the United States, and I like to hire in the United States for one simple reason, okay? We share a common legal system, and it's very easy for us to enforce contracts in the same legal system. If you're in the United Kingdom, you're probably going to want to hire somebody in the United Kingdom. Or at least you want to be able to ensure that you can enforce the contract. You have the resources, the money, the comfort level of enforcing the contract. Because if you have this non-disclosure in place and they blog about it and you can't enforce it and it gets published, that may put your patent, your intellectual property, in jeopardy. And you don't want that to happen, especially if you're onto something, right? So location is very important. Another aspect you want to look at when outsourcing talent is the education level. What type of school did they go to? Where did they go to school? What kind of degree did they get? If you look at their education and you're hiring them for product design, do they have a background in industrial design? Do they have a background in mechanical engineering? If you have electronics, do they have a computer or electrical engineering background? Or are they just pretending? Are they, a Google engineer where, they don't work for Google, but they find all their information on how to do things via Google? That's not the type of person you want to hire. Another thing you want to look out for is what kind of tools are they using, okay? There are 3, maybe 4 tools that you should develop products in, okay? SolidWorks, Autodesk, okay? Pro Engineer, and if it's a big system, sometimes CADIA, which is made by the same people that make SolidWorks. All the other CAD systems for developing your product, they don't matter. They are not professional grade CAD systems that have been tried, true, and tested over the years, okay? I'm very biased on this. I feel very strongly on this. You're not going to develop products on some other hobby CAD program and be confident to go into manufacturing. You're going to waste a lot of money. You're going to find things didn't go right in production, and you don't want that. Especially if you're outsourcing talent. You're outsourcing, you want to know that they're using SolidWorks, Autodesk, Pro Engineer, okay? And that they're very good at it. They're proficient at it. They have 3 or 4 years at least experience using that product proficiently. Let's talk about pay rate. If you are hiring by the hour, or if you are comparing firm fixed price budgets, let's talk about pay rate, okay? I've seen a lot of people make the mistakes of hiring just based on pay rate. I've seen people on freelance websites go out and say, hey, if you charge more than $20 an hour, don't bother applying. And you're like, wow, they just don't want experienced people to apply. Here's how the pay rate usually goes for hourly pay rate, okay? It goes something like this, okay? People that charge very low pay rate, they don't know very much, or they're not very good. They're going to take longer. Why? Because you're paying for their education. So on the surface, hey, it looks good. They have good reviews, they do good work, and they charge very little. But because they take forever, they're learning as they go, and over time, it costs you more. It costs you more per project. It costs you more in the delays your schedule. They may make mistakes in product design that you didn't even know they made until after you've had it manufactured. And that's going to cost you a lot of money, okay? It's going to cost you a tremendous amount of money. People that charge more, okay? People at the higher end of the spectrum usually have a better reputation, have more business, higher ratings. They charge more, but guess what? Time is money, and they are fast. And not only are they fast, but they have great experience, and they don't make those mistakes going into manufacturing. Okay? So make sure you hire your talent appropriately. Okay? Don't hire people just because they're cheap. Okay? Hire people because they're good and you feel that they're the best fit. Make sure you ask them intelligent questions. At Let's Key Innovations, we have industrial design engineers, we have mechanical engineers, we have electrical engineers, all under one roof. Because our industrial designer is great at the art part and the user interface and the human factors engineering. But when it comes to the finite element analysis to make sure that we're using enough plastic and it's optimized for cost and the right manufacturing process, the mechanical engineer has to take over. And it has electronics in it. Well, the electrical engineer or the computer engineer has to design that board or integrate the electronics to go with that product. So not one engineer, there's no one product design engineer that can design your entire product unless your entire product is simplified. It's only mechanical or it's only electronic. And when you hire and you're looking for firm fixed price contracts, which you should be doing because firm fixed price means you're not going to pay any more than that, be wary of the location too, okay? Because what happens if you sign or agree to this firm fixed price contract and they don't completely deliver on the product? You pay them in milestones, they haven't delivered. Well, if they're in another country, you might not be able to make them deliver. And more importantly, they're messing up your schedule, okay? Your product development is slipping. You're missing opportunity of sales in the market. And you have money tied up with this company, God knows where, right? And the legal process, well, the legal process in this country takes a long time. Imagine how long it takes in other countries. Right? So again, be wary of the location. And look for negotiation too. Good engineering companies might negotiate your requirements for you, with you. Okay, so for example, if you sent requirements to Letsky Innovations and we didn't feel it was detailed enough, what we would do is we would ask you to further define your requirements, or we would ask you the questions so that we could further define the requirements. Okay, or if we did requirements analysis and we said, okay, we got the size, we got the shape, but the material that they chose for the weight that they want, it's not the right material. It's going to be too heavy, for example. So we may come back and negotiate that requirement and say, okay, would you consider these materials? Because those materials are going to be lighter, more appropriate, just as strong for the design. So to recap, Module 3, we covered technical specifications and product requirements, what they are, how to write them, and how they save you thousands of dollars developing your product. We discussed outsourcing talent and looking out for location, and we discussed manufacturing processes and how they feed into your requirements. This concludes Module 3. We'll see you for Module 4 when we talk about prototyping. And if you have any questions whatsoever, just email us. Send an email with your question to info@letskyinnovations.com. We're happy to help, and engineers are standing by ready to answer your questions.